In 9 AD, General Marcus Aurelius Corvus returns to Rome as the sole survivor of the infamous Battle of Teutoburg Forest, where 3 Roman legions were annihilated by Germanic tribes. Haunted by survivors' guilt and the loss of his men, including his own son who served under him, Marcus finds himself unable to face his wife or the Senate. While sitting alone in the Forum Romanum at dawn, drowning in grief and contemplating taking his own life, he encounters Livia, a 7-year-old orphan girl who sells flowers to support herself. Her innocent question about missing her mother opens a connection between 2 souls marked by loss. Through their unlikely friendship, both discover that healing comes not from forgetting the dead, but from learning to carry their memory while choosing to live. The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of the Forum Romanum, like the ghosts that haunted Marcus Aurelius Corvus. He sat on the cold marble steps of the Temple of Vesta, his scarlet cloak, once the proud symbol of his rank, now stained with mud and blood that no amount of washing could remove. The weight of his armor pressed down on him, but not as heavily as the weight of 20,000 dead men. 3 legions, the Hestian, Fistian, and Nichorn, gone. His fingers traced the pommel of his gladius, the same sword that had failed to save his son, Gaius. The boy, no, the man Marcus had to remind himself, had been so proud to serve under his father's command. "We'll conquer Germania together, father," Gaius had said, his young face bright with the glory of Rome. Now that face existed only in Marcus's nightmares, frozen in a silent scream as Germanic spears found their mark. Flowers for the dawn, fresh flowers for the temples. The thin voice cut through his reverie. Marcus looked up to see a small girl, perhaps 7 winters old, carrying a basket almost as large as herself. Her tunic was patched and repatched, her feet bare despite the morning chill. Dark hair fell in tangled waves around a face that was too thin, too knowing for her age. She stopped when she saw him, her large brown eyes taking in his military dress. The eagle standard propped against the steps, the only one saved from 3 legions and the darkness that seemed to emanate from him like morning fog. "Are you a soldier?" she asked, tilting her head. Marcus almost laughed. A soldier. He had been Rome's youngest general, trained under Tiberius himself, victor of a dozen campaigns. Now he was nothing but a breathing corpse, a man who should have died with his legions. "I was," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. He hadn't spoken since giving his report to the Senate 2 days ago. The girl stepped closer, seemingly unafraid of his intimidating presence. "My papa was a soldier too. He went to fight the bad men across the sea and never came back." She set down her basket and sat beside him, an act of casual boldness that would have scandalized proper Roman society. "Mama said he became a star, watching over us. But then Mama got sick and became a star too." She said it so matter-of-factly, this litany of loss, that it pierced through Marcus's self-pity like a blade. "Do you also miss your mama?" she asked, looking up at him with those 2 wise eyes. The question was so unexpected, so innocently direct, that Marcus found himself answering truthfully. "My mother died when I was young, but I miss my son. Did he become a star too?" Marcus closed his eyes, seeing again the hellish forest, the ambush, the rain of Germanic spears, the bog that swallowed men whole. 3 days of slaughter, Verus, the fool, falling on his sword, and Gaius trying to rally his century even as blood poured from his wounds. "Yes," he whispered. "He became a star." The girl nodded solemnly. "It hurts," she said simply. "People say it gets better, but it doesn't. It just gets different." From the mouth of babes, Marcus thought. This child understood what the Senate's platitudes could not touch. "What's your name, little one?" "Livia, like the Empress," Mama said. "She thought it would bring me fortune." She smiled ruefully, gesturing at her ragged appearance. "I don't think it worked. I'm Marcus the sad soldier," she said, not mockingly, but as if assigning him a title. "Why are you here so early?" Don't soldiers sleep in camps? I couldn't sleep. He had tried, but every time he closed his eyes, he heard them, the screams, the war cries, the sound of Roman shields splintering under Germanic axes. I don't sleep much either, Livia confided. That's why I come early to get the best flowers from the market. The flower sellers feel sorry for me and give me the ones that won't last another day. But they're still pretty for a while. She reached into her basket and pulled out a small white lily, its petals slightly wilted at the edges. Here, for your son who's a star now. The simple gesture shattered something inside Marcus. This child, who had nothing, offering comfort to a general who had everything except what mattered. His hand shook as he took the flower. I don't have any coin. It's not for buying, Livia interrupted. It's for remembering. Mama taught me that. She said as long as we remember them, they're not really gone. They live in here. She tapped her thin chest over her heart. Marcus stared at the flower, then at the child. In Germania, he had commanded legions, had the power of Rome at his fingertips. Here, in the growing dawn light, he was being taught about loss by an orphan who sold dying flowers. 20,000 men, he said suddenly, needing to confess to someone, even if it was just this strange, wise child. I led 20,000 men into that forest. Fathers, sons, brothers. I promised them glory. I gave them death. Livia was quiet for a moment. Then she scooted closer, her small shoulder barely reaching his elbow. Papa used to say that soldiers protect people. Maybe your 20,000 are protecting us now, from up there with the stars. A whole army of star soldiers, keeping Rome safe from heaven. It was a child's fantasy, naive and impossible. But something about the image, his legions standing eternal watch among the constellations, eased the tightness in his chest, just a fraction. You should go, Marcus said roughly, suddenly aware of how inappropriate this was. A general of Rome sharing his grief with a street child. The Forum will fill soon. You'll want to sell your flowers. Livia stood but didn't pick up her basket immediately. I'll be here tomorrow too, she said, in case you need another flower for remembering. I won't be here, Marcus said. He touched the dagger at his belt, a decision he'd made before dawn. Tonight, after he'd written the necessary letters, he would join his son and his men. It was the only honorable path left. Livia studied him with those knowing eyes. Mama said that too the night before she became a star, but I asked her to stay one more day, and then another, and another. She stayed 47 more days because I kept asking. She picked up her basket. So I'm asking you, Marcus, the sad soldier, stay one more day. The stars will still be there tomorrow. Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the growing crowd of early morning worshippers and merchants. Marcus sat alone on the steps, holding a wilted lily and wondering how a child's words could echo louder than Senate proclamations. The sun climbed higher, painting the Forum in shades of gold and shadow. Around him, Rome awakened. Merchants hawking wares, senators discussing politics, priests preparing for morning rituals, life continuing oblivious to the ghosts that walked among them. Marcus stood slowly, his joints protesting after the long, cold vigil. He should return to his villa, face his wife Helena, explain why their son wouldn't be coming home. He should prepare for the formal inquiry the Senate would surely launch. He should do many things. Instead, he found himself walking to the small shrine of Mars at the corner of the Forum. He placed the lily at the base of the altar, among the grand offerings of gold and incense. For Gaius, he whispered, and for all of them. As he turned to leave, he noticed a familiar small figure by the fountain, trying to interest a wealthy matron in her flowers. The woman waved Livia away dismissively, and the girl's shoulders drooped just a little before she straightened them again, moving on to the next potential customer. Resilience, Marcus thought. This child who had lost everything possessed what he, a general of Rome, had forgotten, the simple courage to face another day. He had promised Livia he wouldn't be here tomorrow, but then again, He had promised 20,000 men they would return home victorious. Perhaps it was time he learned to make different kinds of promises. The sun was fully risen now, burning away the morning mist. Somewhere in the German forests, the bones of 3 legions lay unburied. Here in Rome, a little girl sold flowers to survive, and a broken general stood at a crossroads between death and something he couldn't yet name. One more day, she had asked. Marcus pulled his cloak tighter and walked back into the city, leaving his eagled standard by the temple steps. He would retrieve it tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow, Marcus returned to his villa as the sun reached its zenith, each step heavier than the last. The house stood on the Palatine Hill, a testament to his family's ancient lineage and his own military victories. Now it felt like a tomb. The slaves averted their eyes as he passed, whispers dying on their lips. They knew, all of Rome knew by now. Marcus Aurelius Corvus, the general who had lost 3 eagles, 3 legions, 3 times the honor of Rome. Dominus, his steward, Tertius, appeared with practiced silence. The old Greek had served the family for 30 years, had raised Marcus after his mother's death. The lady Helena, I know. Marcus cut him off. He had avoided his wife for 2 days, unable to face her grief when he could barely contain his own. Send word that I've returned. She is in the garden, Dominus. She has been there since dawn. The garden, where Gaius had played as a child, where he had practiced his first sword forms under Marcus's watchful eye. Marcus steeled himself and walked through the atrium, past the funeral masks of his ancestors, all warriors, all men who had died with honor, not survived through shame. Helena sat by the fountain, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. She had always been beautiful, but grief had refined her features to something almost ethereal. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. I received your letter, she said, her voice carefully neutral. 20 sentences to tell me our son is dead. I counted them, Marcus. 20 sentences, 1 for each year of his life. Helena, did he suffer? She turned then, and Marcus saw that her eyes were dry. She had exhausted her tears while he had been drowning in his own guilt. I need to know, did my boy suffer? Marcus wanted to lie, to give her the comfort of believing Gaius had died quickly, heroically, but the words wouldn't come. He was brave, he said. Instead, he tried to rally his men even as he couldn't finish, even as he bled to death in a German forest, calling for his father, who couldn't save him. Helena's voice was sharp as a blade. Yes, I can imagine it well enough. I tried. You survived. She stood, her movements graceful despite the tremor in her hands. 20,000 dead, including 3 of your senior commanders, yet you survived. How fortunate. The accusation hung between them like a sword. Marcus had asked himself the same question 1,000 times. Why he had fought as hard as any man, had tried to organize a fighting retreat when the ambush became clear. But when young Tribune Callias had thrown himself between Marcus and a Germanic spear, when his men had formed a desperate circle around him screaming, "Save the general," he had let them. He had let them die for him. I should have died with them, he said quietly. Yes, Helena agreed, and the simple word cut deeper than any scream could have. You should have. She moved past him toward the house, pausing at the doorway. I've had your things moved to the east wing. I cannot look at you and not see him. Not yet. She left him alone in the garden, where their son had played, where the ghosts of happier days mocked the present. Marcus sank onto the bench, his head in his hands. The lily Livia had given him was still tucked in his belt, wilted now but somehow still holding its shape. As long as we remember them, they're not really gone. A child's wisdom perhaps truer than all the philosophy of Rome's greatest thinkers. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The east wing of the villa was sparse, meant for guests, not the master of the house, but it suited him. He was a guest in his own life now, a stranger wearing familiar skin. He rose before dawn again, drawn by something he couldn't name, back to the Forum. The city was quieter this early, only bakers and water carriers beginning their day. His feet found the same path, the same steps of the Temple of Vesta. She was already there. Livia sat in the exact spot he had occupied yesterday, her flower basket beside her, humming a tuneless melody. She looked up at his approach and smiled. Not the practiced smile of Roman society, but something genuine and warming. "You came back," she said, as if she had never doubted it. "I said I wouldn't. People say lots of things." She scooted over, making room for him. "I saved you a flower. This one's fresher." She produced a small rose, its petals the color of dawn. "For hope," Mama used to say. "Red for remembering, pink for hope." Marcus took the flower, studying its delicate petals. "Why aren't you afraid of me? Most children run from soldiers. Should I be afraid?" She tilted her head, genuinely curious. "I've done terrible things, led men to their deaths, failed in my duty to Rome, to my family, to—" "Did you mean to—" The question stopped him short. "What? Did you mean for them to die? Did you wake up that morning and say, 'Today I'll let everyone die'?" "No, of course not." "Then you're just sad, not scary." She said it with the certainty only children possess. "Scary people hurt others on purpose. You're just hurt." They sat in companionable silence as the Forum slowly came to life. Livia would occasionally jump up to approach early passers-by, returning with either a small coin or a shake of her head, seemingly unbothered by rejection. "How long have you been alone?" Marcus asked during one of her returns. "Since last winter. 4 months. Maybe 5. I don't count days anymore." She arranged her remaining flowers, removing the most wilted ones. "The priests at the Temple of Ceres give me bread sometimes, and I sleep in the alcove behind the bathhouse. It's warm there." The casual recitation of her survival struck Marcus anew. This child faced each day with nothing but determination and dying flowers, while he, with his villa and wealth and name, contemplated ending it all. "Don't you have family?" "Surely someone. Mama's brother is a merchant in Ostia, but he has his own children. He sent me away when I went to him." No bitterness in her voice, just fact. "He said the gods had cursed our family and he couldn't risk their anger spreading to his household." "That's not how the gods work," Marcus said, surprised by his own vehemence. Livia shrugged. "Maybe, but believing it made it easier for him to close his door." A well-dressed matron approached, eyeing Livia's flowers. The woman's gaze flickered to Marcus in his general's cloak, widening in recognition. She hurriedly purchased 3 flowers at twice the asking price, and scurried away. "She recognized you," Livia observed. "You're famous?" "Infamous, more like. I'm the general who lost at Teutoburg Forest." "Ooh," she considered this. "Is that why you're so sad? Because you lost? Because they died? Because I couldn't protect them? Because I promised—" His voice broke. "I promised my son I'd keep him safe." Livia was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walking to her basket and pulling out something wrapped in cloth. It was a small wooden soldier, crudely carved but carefully maintained. "This was Papa's," she said, offering it to him. "He made it for me before he left, said as long as I had it, a piece of him would always be protecting me." She pressed it into Marcus's palm. "Maybe it can protect you now. I can't take this. It's not for keeping," she said firmly. "It's for borrowing. Until you don't need it anymore." Marcus stared at the little wooden figure, its features worn smooth by small hands. This child who had nothing was offering him her most precious possession because she saw his pain and wanted to help. "My son had a warden horse," he found himself saying. "He carried it everywhere when he was young. Even in Germania, he kept it in his pack. Said it reminded him of home." "Maybe he still has it," Livia suggested. "In the Star Place." "The Star Place? Where they all go?" "Mama said it's not like here. They don't need food or clothes or anything. Just love. So they keep the things that mean love." She sat back down beside him. Your son has his horse, and all those soldier stars have their memories of home, and they're all okay up there. It's just us down here who hurt." Marcus turned the wooden soldier over in his hands. Such a simple thing, yet it carried the weight of a father's love, a daughter's faith, a connection between the living and the dead that no philosophy could fully explain. "You're very wise for someone so young," he said. "Mama said suffering makes you older inside." She leaned against his arm, a gesture so trusting it nearly undid him. But she also said, "That's why we need to help each other, because everyone is suffering something." The sun climbed higher, and the forum filled with its daily chaos. Livia sold a few more flowers, always returning to sit beside him between customers. She chatted about small things, which baker sometimes gave her day-old bread, how the cats behind the temple were growing fat, the way morning frost made the statues look like they were crying. "I should go," Marcus finally said as noon approached, "and you should find better company than a disgraced general." "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, ignoring his statement. He thought of his villa, of Helena's cold grief, of the Senate's upcoming inquiry, of all the reasons he should say no. Instead, he found himself nodding. "Same time tomorrow." As he walked away, still clutching the wooden soldier, he heard her voice rise above the crowd. "Flowers for remembering, flowers for hope." That night, he placed the wooden soldier on the small shrine in his room, next to the wilted lily and the pink rose. 3 simple objects that somehow held more meaning than all his military decorations. He thought of Livia sleeping in an alcove, thought of his son's last moments, thought of 20,000 men looking to the stars. The weight of it all should have crushed him, but something else was there now, fragile as flower petals but persistent as dawn. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward learning how to carry the weight without letting it destroy him. Tomorrow, he decided, he would face tomorrow. For the first time since Teutoburg, it felt like a choice rather than a curse. The summons came at dawn on the 3rd day, delivered by a nervous young tribune who couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. The Senate would convene at the 3rd hour to hear testimony regarding the disaster at Teutoburg Forest. Marcus was to appear in full military dress, prepared to account for the loss of 3 eagles. Marcus dismissed the tribune and stood in his sparse room staring at his ceremonial armor. Each piece had been earned through victory: the Corona Civica for saving Roman lives at Vindobona, the Falaire for valor in Illyricum. Now they felt like accusations. "Dominus," Tertius appeared at the doorway. "Shall I prepare your bath?" "Yes." "And Tertius," Marcus turned to the old slave, "if today goes poorly, you're to take your freedom. The papers are already drawn." The Greek's weathered face showed no surprise. "I have served your family for 30 years, Dominus. I will not abandon it now." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew that look. He'd seen it on centurions' faces before hopeless battles. The quiet determination of men who had chosen their fate. He bathed and dressed with mechanical precision, each piece of armor settling into place like chains. As he prepared to leave, he remembered the wooden soldier Livia had lent him. On impulse, he tucked it beneath his breastplate, over his heart. The forum was already bustling when he arrived. He had time before the Senate convened, and his feet carried him to the now familiar steps. Livia was there, of course, arranging her flowers with careful concentration. "You look like Mars himself," she said, eyes wide at his full military splendor, all shiny and important. "The Senate requires it," he said, sitting beside her despite the stares his presence drew. "They want to remind everyone what Rome has lost." "What will they do?" "Ask questions, demand answers. I don't have. Perhaps exile me, perhaps worse." He kept his voice level, not wanting to frighten her. "It's what I deserve." Livia frowned, her small face scrunching in thought. "Mama used to say that deserving is a funny thing. We don't get what we deserve, good or bad. We get what happens, and then we decide what to do with it. Your mother was a philosopher. She was a baker's daughter who married a soldier." Livia smiled at the memory. "But she thought about things. She said that's free thinking. Even poor people can afford thoughts." Despite everything, Marcus found himself almost smiling. Indeed they can. Here, Livia pressed a flower into his hand, a small sprig of laurel, for victory. I'm not going to battle, little one, just to judgment. Same thing sometimes. She studied him with those two wise eyes. Will you come back after, or will they take you away? I don't know. She nodded, accepting uncertainty as children who had lost everything learn to do. If they take you away, remember the star place. I'll look for you there someday when I'm old and tired. We can find my parents and your son, and they can all meet. The simple faith in her words, the assumption that their strange friendship would matter even beyond death, threatened to undo his careful composure. I'll remember, he promised. The Senate House loomed before him like a great marble beast, its columns casting long shadows in the morning sun. Inside, 300 of Rome's most powerful men waited to dissect his failure. Marcus climbed the steps, each one feeling like a mile. The chamber was packed, not just senators but observers, military officials, foreign dignitaries, even some of the families of the lost. Helena was not among them. Marcus was grateful for that small mercy. Marcus Aurelius Corvus, the presiding consul, Lucius Nerva, you stand before this body to give account of the loss suffered at Teutoburg Forest. 3 eagles fallen, 20,000 Roman lives extinguished. Speak. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of every gaze. He had rehearsed this moment, prepared explanations and tactical analysis. But standing there, with Livia's laurel hidden in his belt and her wooden soldier pressed against his heart, different words came. I failed. A murmur ran through the chamber. They had expected excuses, blame-shifting, complex military explanations, not this simple admission. I trusted in complete intelligence. I led 3 legions into hostile territory without adequate reconnaissance. I ignored warning signs because I was eager for glory, for myself, for Rome, for my son who served under me. His voice remained steady, though each word cost him. When the ambush came, I fought. When the situation became hopeless, I tried to organize a retreat, but when my men chose to die protecting me, I let them. I survived while better men fell. For this, I have no defense. The silence was absolute. Even the ever-present sounds of Rome beyond the walls seemed to fade. You offer no mitigation? Nerva asked, clearly taken aback. No explanation of Germanic treachery, of Varus's incompetence, of impossible conditions. Others may speak of such things if they wish. I speak only of my own failures. An elderly senator, Cassius, veteran of the Parthian campaigns, stood slowly. And what of your survival, General? Some would call it cowardice. Marcus met his gaze directly. I've called it worse, Senator. Every dawn I ask why the gods spared me while taking so many others. I have no answer that satisfies. The boy's father speaks truth. The voice came from the observers section. A man in a rough tunic stood, a centurion's bearing despite civilian clothes. I am Quintus Brutus. My son served in the 19th. His last letter spoke of General Corvus, how he shared their hardships, ate their rations, stood watch in the rain. My boy died at Teutoburg, but I'll not hear Marcus Aurelius called coward. He stayed with them to the end, yet he lives while your son does not, another senator pointed out. I, Brutus, nodded. And that's his punishment, isn't it? Living when they don't, carrying their names, their faces. You want to exile him, execute him. You'd be doing him a kindness. Make him live with it. That's justice. More voices rose, some calling for mercy, others for severe punishment. Marcus stood silent in the center of it all, thinking not of his fate, but of a little girl selling flowers, making each day count because it was all she had. Finally, Nerva called for order. Marcus Aurelius Corvus, this body finds you guilty of grave errors in judgment leading to the loss of 3 legions. However, in recognition of your previous service and your forthright testimony, the Senate offers you a choice: exile to the edges of the empire, there to live out your days in obscurity, or, he paused, voluntary acceptance of a mission to Germania to retrieve the lost eagles and the bones of our fallen for proper rites. A mission from which you would not be expected to return, a suicide mission, wrapped in the cloth of honor. Marcus almost smiled at the political elegance of it. I need time to consider. You have until tomorrow's dawn. This Senate is adjourned. Marcus left the chamber to find the sun already descending. The day had been consumed by accusation and judgment, but he found himself returning to the Temple of Vesta's steps. Livia wasn't there. She would have sold her flowers and found whatever shelter the night offered, but on the spot where she usually sat, a single flower waited. A white lily, fresh this time, with a small piece of bark beneath it. Someone had helped her scratch words into it. For tomorrow. He picked up the flower and the makeshift message, something loosening in his chest: a suicide mission to retrieve the eagles, or exile in disgrace. The Senate thought they were offering him a choice between two deaths, fast or slow, but standing there, holding a flower left by a child who had every reason to give up, but didn't, Marcus saw a third option: not redemption. That was too grand a word, but perhaps purpose, perhaps a reason to face tomorrow that had nothing to do with glory or shame. He thought of Livia, sleeping in her alcove, facing each dawn with nothing but determination and flowers. He thought of his son who would want his bones brought home. He thought of 20,000 men whose families deserved closure. Tomorrow, he would tell the Senate he accepted their mission, not because he sought death, but because someone should try to bring those boys home. Someone who knew their names, who carried their weight, who had learned from a street child that remembering was its own form of honor. He tucked the lily into his belt next to the laurel and walked home through streets coming alive with evening trade. Somewhere in the city, a little girl with too much wisdom would wake tomorrow and return to her spot by the temple, expecting to see him. He would not disappoint her. Not tomorrow, and perhaps, if the gods were kind or cruel enough to let him survive his mission, not ever. Dawn came wrapped in river mist, the Tiber's breath mingling with cooking smoke from the Subura. Marcus stood before the Senate house, his decision made. The wooden soldier rested against his heart, Livia's flowers tucked in his belt, talismans against the cold marble of Roman justice. Marcus Aurelius Corvus, Consul Nerva's voice echoed in the near-empty chamber. Only a handful of senators had come to hear his choice. What is your decision? I accept the mission to Germania. I will attempt to retrieve the eagles and recover our fallen. Nerva nodded slowly. The Senate recognizes your choice. You have 1 month to prepare. Select 20 men, volunteers only. The Senate will provide basic supplies but no legion support. May the gods have mercy on your souls. 20 men to face the tribes that destroyed 3 legions. It was absurd, impossible, perfect. Marcus bowed and left without another word. The Forum was just awakening as he emerged, and his feet carried him automatically to the Temple of Vesta. Livia was already there, her basket fuller than usual. The flower seller at the market was sick, she explained, noticing his glance. Her daughter gave me extra because she knows I'm careful with them. She studied his face. The Senate was mean to you. They gave me a choice. I chose. The dangerous thing? He sat beside her, abandoning all pretense of minorly dignity. I'm going back to Germania to find the eagles, the legion standards, and bring home the men who died. Livia absorbed this quietly. When? 1 month. Will you come back? Everyone else assumed he wouldn't. The Senate, Helena, even himself. But this child asked, as if his return were possible, even expected. I don't know, he answered honestly. She rearranged her flowers, creating small bouquets with practiced efficiency. Then we have 1 month of mornings. Livia, that's 30 flowers, she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. 1 for each day. I'll save the best ones for you. The simple acceptance, the quiet way she claimed their remaining time, struck him more deeply than any of the Senate's pronouncements. "I may not be able to come every morning. There's much to prepare. Then come when you can. I'll be here." A wealthy merchant approached, and Livia jumped up to offer her wares. Marcus watched her work, the bright smile that never quite reached her eyes, the careful handling of each flower, the gracious acceptance of rejection. When she returned, she had sold 3 bouquets. "Good morning," he asked. "Better than some." She counted her coins carefully. "Enough for bread and maybe some cheese. The baker's wife likes me. She lost a daughter my age." They sat in companionable silence as the forum filled. Marcus found himself studying the child beside him. The careful darning on her tunic, the way she tucked her bare feet under her when the stone grew cold, the protective curve of her thin shoulders around her flower basket. "Where will you go when winter comes?" The thought struck him suddenly. It was early summer now, but in a few months, same as last winter, I suppose. The priests sometimes let street children sleep in the temple vestibules when it snows. Or there are the sewers. They're warm if you can stand the smell. The sewers. Marcus felt something cold grip his chest. "That's no place for anyone," Livia finished. "I know, but being alive and smelly is better than being clean and frozen." She said it matter-of-factly, but Marcus caught the flash of fear in her eyes. Winter was the enemy of street children, more deadly than any human threat. An idea formed, reckless and probably foolish. "Can you read?" "A little. Mama taught me letters and I practice with shop signs. And write. Some." "Why?" Instead of answering, Marcus stood. "Come with me. Bring your basket." She followed without question, this strange trust she had in him both humbling and terrifying. He led her through the forum to a quieter district, stopping before a modest but clean building. "Demetrius of Athens." She read the sign slowly. "Scribe and tutor," Marcus supplied. "He's a friend, freed slave, now teaches letters to merchants' children." He knocked, and a thin Greek answered, his surprise evident at seeing a general at his door. "Marcus? By the gods, I heard about. That is." Demetrius fumbled for words. "I need a favor, old friend. This is Livia. She needs letters and numbers, properly taught. I'll pay for daily lessons." Demetrius looked between them, the disgraced general and the street child, and his expression softened. "Of course. When shall we begin?" "Today, if possible. I have—" Marcus paused. "Limited time." Understanding dawned in the Greek's eyes. "Ah. The Senate's mercy, I assume." "Very well. Livia, was it? Can you come each afternoon after the day's heat?" Livia looked at Marcus, confusion clear on her face. "But why?" "Because winter comes whether we're ready or not," Marcus said quietly. "And because knowledge, as your mother said, is free to all who can grasp it. This is just help with the grasping. I can't pay you back. Then don't. Help someone else someday when you can." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but I still sell flowers in the mornings. I wouldn't expect otherwise." They arranged the details. Demetrius would teach her 3 hours each afternoon, focusing on practical skills that might help her find work as a shop assistant or household scribe. It wasn't much against the weight of her circumstances, but it was something. As they walked back to the forum, Livia slipped her small hand into his. "You're trying to save me. Is it working?" "Maybe. But who's saving you?" Marcus had no answer for that. The following days fell into a pattern. Dawn at the temple steps, sharing silence and flowers and small observations about life. Then Marcus would spend his days preparing for the mission, recruiting volunteers from veterans who remembered better days, gathering supplies, studying maps of the Teutoburg region. The volunteers came slowly. First was Brutus, the centurion's father who had spoken at the Senate. "My boy's bones lie in that cursed forest," he said simply. "I'm too old for vengeance, but not for duty. I'll help bring them home." Then came others, men who had lost sons, brothers, friends, men too old or too damaged for regular service. but unable to let the dead lie unburied. By the end of 2 weeks, Marcus had his 20, plus himself. They called themselves the ferrymen, after the mythical Charon. Their job was to ferry the dead home across the river of memory. Helena heard about the mission, of course. She came to him one evening in the East Wing, the first time they'd spoken since that day in the garden. "You're going back," she said. It wasn't a question. To bring them home, Gaius and the others. "The Senate expects you to die there." "Yes." She was quiet for a long moment. "Good," she finally said, but her voice broke on the word. "Find our son Marcus. Find him and bring him home, or join him there. Either way, end this waiting." She left before he could respond, but not before he saw the tears she'd been holding back. They weren't just for Gaius, he realized, but for them, for what they'd been before grief carved them into strangers. The days passed too quickly. Each morning with Livia felt both eternal and fleeting. She showed him her progress with letters, proudly writing her name and his. She told him about Demetrius's lessons, how he was teaching her to keep accounts and write simple contracts. "He says I'm quick," she said one morning, pink with pride. "Says I could be a real scribe someday. Keep books for merchants." "You could be anything," Marcus told her, meaning, "Could I be a soldier?" "Why would you want that?" She shrugged. "To protect people. Like you did, like you're doing now." "I failed at protecting people, little one." "No," she said firmly. "You tried. Failing and not trying aren't the same thing." More wisdom from a child who should have been playing with dolls, not surviving on streets. Marcus wondered, not for the first time, what Rome built on the bones of such children. 5 days before his departure, Livia wasn't at the temple step. Marcus waited, anxiety growing with each passing moment. She had never missed a morning. When the sun reached its zenith with no sign of her, he went searching. He found her at Demetrius's school, huddled in the doorway, burning with fever. "She collapsed during lessons yesterday," Demetrius explained, worry etched on his features. "I kept her here, called a physician, but the fever won't break. She keeps calling for her mother, and for you." Marcus knelt beside her pallet, taking her small, hot hand in his. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused but recognizing. "Marcus, I miss the morning flowers." "Shh, rest now. The flowers will wait." "Can't rest," she mumbled. "Have to be strong. Winter's coming, and you're leaving. And I promised to remember." He stayed with her through the night, cooling her fever with wet cloths, telling her stories of his campaigns, but only the good parts, the moments of wonder in foreign lands, the friends made around campfires. When she grew restless, he sang the marching songs soldiers used to keep rhythm, old tunes his father had taught him. By dawn the fever broke. She woke clear-eyed but weak, and the first thing she said was, "You missed sleep before your journey." "Worth it," he said, relief, making his voice rough. "I was in the star place," she said quietly. "Just for a little while. Mama was there, and your son too. He looks like you, but happier," he said, "to tell you something." Marcus's throat tightened. "What did he say?" "That the wooden horse is safe, and that you should stop carrying the weight alone," he said. She frowned, trying to remember exactly. He said, "The eagles matter less than the men who followed them. Bring them peace, not just bronze." Whether it was fever dream or something more, Marcus couldn't say, but the words sounded like Gaius, thoughtful, wise beyond his years, always seeing the human truth beneath military glory. "I'll remember," he promised. Livia squeezed his hand weakly. 4 more mornings. "We still have 4 more mornings." "We do. Good. I have special flowers saved, and something else, but that's for the last day." Marcus stayed until she fell into natural sleep, then left instructions with Demetrius for her care. The Greek refused his offered coins. "You've paid for a year of lessons already, my friend. Let me do this much. 4 more mornings, 4 more flowers, and then a journey toward either redemption or reunion." Marcus no longer cared which, as long as he did right by the dead and left something better for the living. Starting with one small girl who sold flowers and spoke of star places, with the certainty of someone who had glimpsed both sides of sorrow and chosen, somehow, to keep hoping. The final dawn arrived dressed in gold and shadow, the sky torn between night and day like Marcus's own heart. He had barely slept, spending the hours organizing final verses and writing letters to Helena, to Demetrius, to Tertius, instructions and farewells, though he couldn't bring himself to call them that. He arrived at the temple steps to find Livia already there, but she wasn't alone. A small crowd had gathered. Demetrius, some of the regular flower buyers who had come to know her, even old Brutus and a few of the other ferrymen. At the center sat Livia, her basket overflowing with flowers of every color. "He heard," she explained, a shy smile on her face, "about you going away. They wanted to help." One by one, the assembled Romans came forward. A baker's wife pressed a bag of honey cakes into Livia's hands for the brave general. A merchant donated a small purse of coins for the child's education. Even a stern-faced senator Marcus vaguely recognized left a scroll, maps of the northern trade routes. They might help. It was overwhelming, this unexpected kindness. Rome could be cruel, but it could also surprise with moments of grace. As the crowd dispersed, leaving just Marcus and Livia in their usual spot, she pulled out a carefully wrapped bundle from beneath her flower basket. "I made you something," she said, suddenly shy. Well, Demetrius helped with the hard part. Inside was a small leather journal, its pages hand-sewn with careful, if uneven, stitches. On the first page, in her painstaking new handwriting, she had written, "For Marcus the brave soldier, not sad anymore. To remember the journey there and back." "Livia," his voice caught. "There's more. Look." Each page had a pressed flower at the top, all the varieties she had given him over their month of mournings. Lily for remembrance, rose for hope, laurel for victory, and dozens more. Under each, she had written what they meant, the memories they held. "So you don't forget," she said. "When you're far away, you can look at them and remember that someone here is waiting for you to come back." Marcus pulled her into an embrace, not caring who might see a general hugging a street child. She was so small, so fragile, yet somehow the strongest person he knew. "I have something for you too," he said when he finally let her go. He pulled out a sealed scroll. "This is for you, but you can't open it until after I leave. Promise?" She nodded solemnly, tucking it into her basket. They sat together as the sun climbed, not talking much. What was there to say that hadn't been said in all their dawn conversations? Instead, they watched Rome wake up one last time together, merchants opening shops, priests preparing for morning rites, slaves hurrying on errands, life continuing its endless dance. "Will you write to me?" Livia asked eventually. "Demetrius is teaching me to read better. I could practice with your letters. If I can find a way to send them, yes, and I'll write to you. Even if you can't get them, I'll tell you about the flowers and the lessons, and how the baker's cat had kittens." She paused. "That way, you'll know things are still happening here, that there's still a place for you." Brutus appeared at the base of the steps, dressed in traveling gear. "It's time, General. The men are assembled at the Capena gate." Marcus stood slowly, his hand resting on Livia's small shoulder. "Remember what I told you about winter. If you need anything, I'll be all right," she interrupted. "I have lessons now, and people know me, and I'm tough. Street flower girls have to be." He wanted to promise he'd return, wanted to lie and say everything would be fine, but she deserved better than false hope. "Take care of yourself, little one. You too." She stood, reaching into her basket one last time. "This is for the journey." It was a single flower, one he didn't recognize, small and white with delicate purple edges. "What does this one mean?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never seen it before." The flower seller's daughter said it came from far away, from the mountains where the gods live. She said it means whatever you need it to mean. He tucked it carefully into the journal. "Then it means until we meet again, in this place or the star place," she agreed. Either way, he kissed her forehead, a father's blessing, then turned and walked away. He didn't look back, couldn't, but he heard her voice rise behind him, strong and clear. Flowers for remembrance, flowers for hope, flowers for soldiers coming home. At the Carpina gate, 20 men waited. They were a motley group. Old soldiers, young idealists, fathers seeking their sons' bones. Each had their reasons, their ghosts. But as Marcus approached, they straightened and he saw something in their faces he hadn't expected. Not resignation, but determination. "Well, lads," Brutus called out, "the ferryman's here. Time to sail." They marched out of Rome as the sun reached its zenith, a peculiar procession, too few to be an army, too many to be forgotten. Citizens lined the streets, some jeering at the foolish mission, others offering prayers. Marcus kept his eyes forward, but his hand found the journal in his pack, feeling the outline of pressed flowers through the leather. The journey north would take weeks. Germania waited with its dark forests and bitter memories. The tribes who had destroyed 3 legions wouldn't welcome their return. Every rational thought said this was madness, a death march dressed up as duty. But Marcus thought of a small girl selling flowers at dawn, choosing hope over despair one day at a time. If she could face each morning with nothing but determination and dying petals, he could face this journey with 20 good men and the memory of light. As Rome faded behind them, he opened the journal to write his first entry. Day 1. Left Rome at midday. 21 souls seeking 20,000. Bal gave me a flower that means what I need it to mean. I choose to make it mean return. The men are in good spirits. Brutus has them singing marching songs. I told them about a girl who sells flowers and speaks wisdom. They laughed, but kindly. Several admitted they too have people to return to. Wives, children, friends, who wait. The road ahead is long, but every road has an end, and every ending is also a beginning. I will bring them home, the living and the dead. And then I will return to the temple steps, where the bravest person in Rome sells flowers and teaches generals how to hope. He closed the journal and marched on, the mysterious flower pressed safely between its pages, carrying the promise of mornings yet to come. Behind them, in the Forum Romanum, a small girl counted her coins and prepared for afternoon lessons. In her basket, hidden beneath the remaining flowers, lay a sealed scroll. She wouldn't open it until sunset, as promised. But when she did, she would find a formal document adopting her as Marcus's ward, ensuring her education, shelter, and protection whether he returned or not. Demetrius would serve as guardian, with funds enough to last years. At the bottom, in Marcus's own hand, a simple message. Every soldier needs someone to come home to. Every daughter needs someone to remember. Until the stars, little one. The sun continued its arc across the sky, indensed to human hopes and fears. But in its light, 2 souls, separated by duty but bound by something stronger than blood, faced their different battles with the same courage. 1 step, 1 flower, 1 day at a time. The Germanic frontier hadn't changed, still wild, still watching, still hungry for Roman blood. Marcus stood at the edge of the great forest, the same tree line that had swallowed 3 legions, and felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes on his back. His ferryman waited, understanding that this moment belonged to him alone. "Feels like a grave," Brutus said quietly, moving to stand beside him. "The whole forest." "It is," Marcus replied. "The largest Roman grave in the world. 3 weeks of hard marching had brought them here, to the edge of memory and nightmare. The journey had welded his strange band into something resembling a unit, not quite soldiers again, but no longer just grieving civilians. They shared rations, stood watches, told stories of the boys they sought. Young Lucian, barely 18, seeking his older brother, Castor the smith, whose twin sons had served in the 19 Legion. Old Septimus, veteran of Britannia, who had trained half the dead and couldn't let them lie unmourned. Each man a story, each story a reason to walk into darkness. The local auxiliaries say the tribes have been quiet. Brutus continued. Arminius holds the deep forest, but he's made no moves toward the frontier. Arminius, the traitor, who had orchestrated the ambush, who had served with Roman forces before turning his knowledge against them. Marcus had known him, had shared wine with him at officers' gatherings. The betrayal still tasted bitter, as wormwood. He's waiting, Marcus said. He knows someone would come eventually. Rome doesn't forget her eagles. That night, they camped at the forest's edge. Marcus sat apart, writing in Livia's journal by firelight. Day 22. Tomorrow we enter Teutoburg Forest. The men are nervous but determined. I told them about you tonight, how you face each day with courage, though you have every reason not to. Brutus said, you sound like a soldier's daughter through and through. The forest looks exactly as I remember. I had hoped it might seem smaller, less dark. Fear makes memory a liar sometimes. But no, it's still a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. I carry your flower pressed in these pages. When I doubt, I look at it and remember it means what I need it to mean. Tonight, I need it to mean courage. He closed the journal and checked on the sentries. Lucian stood watch, gripping his spear with white knuckles. Scared, boy? Marcus asked, not unkindly. Terrified, sir, but my brother's in there. Gaius Lucian, Optius of the 3rd century. He wrote that he'd make centurion soon, make the family proud. The young man's voice cracked. I just want to bring him home. We will, Marcus promised. All of them we can find. They entered the forest at dawn, following old paths now overgrown with 3 years of neglect. The trees closed around them like a fist, cutting off sky and sound, until only their footsteps and breathing remained. Every shadow could hide a Germanic warrior. Every bird call could signal attack. By midday they found the first signs: rusted Roman equipment, half buried in leaves, a broken gladius, a rotted leather belt with a corroded buckle. Then inevitably the bone. The first skeleton still wore fragments of Roman armor, a pilum driven through where his chest would have been, pinning him to a tree that had grown around the weapon. Dog tags identified him: Quintus Marcellus. Legander, Quintus, old Septimus, said softly. Good lad, loved dice too much, always in debt. But he'd give you his last denarius if you needed it. They marked the location, carefully removed the bones. This would be their pattern: find, identify where possible, collect with reverence. They had brought oilcloths, some sacks, a cart for transport, 21 men, to carry 20,000 home. The deeper they went, the worse it became. Not individual bodies, but clusters, whole centuries who had died in formation, still trying to hold the line. Germanic spears had rusted away, but Roman armor endured, marking where each man had fallen. They fought to the end, Brutus observed, kneeling beside a group of skeletons that had clearly formed a defensive square. Discipline held even in hell. Marcus found himself searching faces, skulls now, but he looked for familiar features, for some sign of Gaius. His son had been with the command group, would have died near. General, Castor called. I think you should see this. In a small clearing lay evidence of a last stand. Expensive armor, officers' helmets, the broken shaft of a legion standard, and there, half buried under 3 years of leaves, the tattered remains of a commander's cloak. Marcus knelt, his hands shaking as he brushed away debris. The cloak bore the insignia of a senior tribune. Near it, smaller bones, young bone. His fingers found the corroded chain of a necklace, and his heart stopped. A wooden horse, somehow preserved by the metal that had surrounded it. Small, crude, worn smooth by young hands. Gaius, he whispered. The others stood back, respecting his grief. Marcus cradled the small toy, seeing not bones but his son at 6, galloping the wooden horse across the garden. At 10, still carrying it secretly in his pack during training. At 20, joking that it was his good luck charm. Some luck, Marcus said, voice breaking. He wrapped Gaius's remains carefully, separately. The wooden horse he kept, tucking it next to Livia's flower in his journal. 2 talismans now, one from the dead, one from the living. They worked through the day, gathering remains. As sunset sets, Brutus suggested making camp, but Marcus shook his head. Something's wrong. We haven't seen a single living soul. No Germanic scouts, no traders, nothing. Maybe they fear Roman reprisal, Lucian suggested, or maybe they're letting us deep enough that escape becomes impossible. Marcus countered, like before, as if his words were prophecy. A horn sounded in the distance, then another, and another. The forest came alive with sound, not the chaotic noise of ambush, but organized signal. Form square, Marcus commanded. His 20 men reacted with surprising speed, the weeks of journey having awakened old instincts. Shields up, spears out. They waited, hearts pounding. But no attack came. Instead, a single figure emerged from the trees, a Germanic warrior carrying a green branch, the symbol of parley. Romans, the warrior called in accented Latin. Arminius would speak with your leader. Marcus's hand tightened on his gladiator. The architect of Rome's greatest defeat wanted to talk. Could be a trap, Brutus warned. Everything's been a trap since we left Rome, Marcus replied. But we didn't come this far to die without answers. Hold position. If I don't return by full dark, take what we've gathered and go. He stepped out of the square, and the Germanic warrior gestured for him to follow. They walked deeper into the forest, Marcus memorizing every turn, every landmark. Finally, they emerged into a vast clearing, where hundreds of Germanic warriors waited. And there, seated on a simple wooden throne, was Arminius. He had aged since Marcus last saw him, the boyish charm replaced by scars and severity. But his eyes remained sharp, intelligent, dangerous. Marcus Aurelius Corvus, Arminius said in perfect Latin, the only Roman to walk out of this forest alive. Why have you returned? You know why. The eagles are dead. Your dead have fed our forest for 3 years. The eagles are melted down, their gold distributed among the tribes. You've come for nothing. Then why did you want to talk? Arminius leaned forward. Because I'm curious. Rome sends no legion to avenge the fallen, no army to reclaim honor. Just 21 fools led by a broken general. Why? Marcus thought of Livia, of flowers at dawn, of choosing hope over despair. Because someone should try. Someone should try, Arminius repeated, tasting the words. How very un-Roman. The Senate I knew would have sent 10 legions or none at all. I'm not here for the Senate. No, you're here for ghosts. I understand ghost, Roman. Do you know how many Germanic dead fed your empire before Teutoburg? How many tribes erased? How many sons taken as slaves? Arminius stood, passion entering his voice. Your boy died here. I remember him. Looked like you. My brothers died in Roman chains. We are equal in loss, you and I. Then let me take them home, Marcus said simply. You've had your victory. Give me my dead. Arminius studied him for a long moment. You know what intrigues me most. You didn't come for revenge. Any other Roman would have used this mission as cover for assassination, would have tried to take my head. But you just want bones. Bones and bronze. Nothing more. The eagles are gone, truly. But the bones. Arminius gestured broadly. Take them, all you can carry. The forest is tired of their presence. Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. Just like that. Not quite. You may gather your dead for 7 days. My warriors won't attack if you stay to the marked paths. But I want something in return. Here it comes, Marcus thought. Tell Rome that Germania is not for taking. Tell them Arminius remembers every slight, every broken treaty, every murdered chief. Tell them the forest will always hunger for Roman blood if they return with swords. He paused. And tell them this: I take no joy in what happened here. Warriors should die in honest battle, not butchery. Your son fought well. Many of them did. It wasn't forgiveness. Could never be that. But it was acknowledgement, warrior to warrior, father to father. I'll tell them, Marcus agreed. 7 days, Roman. After that the forest takes you too. Marcus was escorted back to his men, who nearly collapsed with relief when he appeared. He explained the agreement, and saw wonder replace fear on their faces. 7 days to find 20,000, Brutus calculated. Impossible. Then we'd better start now, Marcus replied. Work through the night if needed. Mark every location. We'll come back with carts with help. But let's get what we can. They labored by torchlight, gathering remains with desperate efficiency. Marcus worked alongside them, but part of his mind was elsewhere, with a little girl in Rome, selling flowers, going to lessons, waiting for letters that might never come. He had found Gaius. That was something. Now he had 7 days to find as many others as possible, to give meaning to this strange reprieve. In his journal that night, exhausted and covered in forest dirt, he wrote, Day 23. Found him. Found my boy. He died with his wooden horse, just as you saw in your fever dream. Tomorrow we search for Brutus's son, for Lucian's brother, for all of them we can find. Arminius gave us 7 days. I don't understand why. Perhaps the gods do move in mysteries, or perhaps even enemies can recognize the honor in bringing home the dead. Your flower has new meaning now. It means grace in unexpected places. Even in this dark forest, small mercies bloom. Hold fast, little one. I'm coming home. 7 days. 7 days to honor 20,000. They worked like men possessed, which perhaps they were, possessed by duty, by love, by the desperate need to make meaning from massacre. Word spread somehow through the Germanic camps, and by the 2nd day, they had unexpected help. Germanic women appeared at the forest's edge, elderly mostly, carrying bundles. At first, the ferryman reached for weapons, but Marcus held up a hand. Wait, he said. One of the women, grey-haired and bent with age, stepped forward. In broken Latin she said, Sons, we lost sons too. In battle, before battle, after. She set down her bundle, Roman equipment, carefully cleaned and preserved. We kept for this. It was surreal, accepting help from those who had been enemies. But grief, Marcus was learning, recognized no borders. The women showed them places where bodies had been buried rather than left to rot. Germanic honor for worthy opponents. They shared water, pointed out dangerous paths, then melted back into the forest like morning mist. I don't understand, young Lucian said, confused by the gesture. Understanding isn't required, Brutus replied gruffly. Just acceptance. Take the help and be grateful. By the 4th day they had established a system. Marcus and half the men gathered remains, while the others transported them to a central collection point, a clearing where they built rough shelters to protect the bones from weather. They worked dawn to dusk and beyond, racing against time. Each discovery was a small victory tinged with sorrow. Lucian found his brother still wearing the medallion their mother had blessed. Castor discovered his twin sons side by side, having died protecting each other. Old Septimus wept openly, as he recognized student after student by their equipment, their positions, the small details only a trainer would know. Marcus wrote each night, hands cramped and filthy. Day 26. We found perhaps 3,000. So many more remain hidden, swallowed by forest and time. But every man we find is a victory over forgetting. The men have stopped seeing bones and started seeing brothers again. Lucian talks to his brother as he works, telling him about home. It should be madness, but instead it feels like healing. I carry your flower and Gaius's horse together now. Life and death, future and past, bound by present duty. You would understand, I think, you who see the sacred in small things. On the 5th day, Arminius himself appeared at their camp. He came with minimal guard, studying their work with unreadable eyes. You Romans, he said to Marcus, even in death you maintain order. Look, bones sorted by legion, by rank, as if they might stand formation once more. They deserve dignity, Marcus replied simply. Dignity. Arminius picked up a Roman helmet, turning it in his hands. This one I remember. Young tribune fought like a lion, killed 6 of my warriors before we brought him down. He set the helmet carefully with its owner's remains. His name? Marcus checked the records they'd been compiling. Antonius Felix, 19 years old, from Capua. Antonius Felix of Capua, Arminius repeated formally. I will remember. It was strange, this ritual developing between them. Enemy commanders speaking names over bones, acknowledging the individual cost of their grand strategies. Why did you really give us 7 days? Marcus asked. Arminius was quiet for a moment. My wife dreams of dead Romans, says their spirits wander the forest, lost and angry, Tribes blame every sick child, every failed crop on Roman ghosts. He smiled bitterly. I defeated Rome but inherited her hauntings. Perhaps if you take them home, we can both find peace. He left without waiting for response, but the next day more Germanic tribespeople arrived with information, locations of bodies, recovered equipment, even a few precious personal effects that had been kept as trophies, but were now returned. The sixth day brought rain, turning the forest floor to mud, making their work miserable, but also revealing things, bones washing free from shallow cover, metal gleaming through loosened earth. They worked in the downpour, no one suggesting they stop. That night, soaked and exhausted, they counted their recovery. Nearly 5,000 sets of remains, partial or complete. Names for perhaps half. It was a fraction of the lost, but it was not nothing. One more day, Brutus said. What do we prioritize? The eagles, Marcus decided. We've gathered who we can. Tomorrow, we search for the standards. It was a long shot. Arminius had said they were melted down, but Romans knew Romans. The eagles were sacred, not mere metal. Someone might have preserved them, hidden them, kept them as supreme trophies. The seventh dawn came grey and misty. Marcus stood at the edge of camp, looking over their gathered dead. So many, yet so few. In Rome, Livia would be arranging her flowers for the morning market. He wondered if she thought of him, if she kept her promise to write letters he might never receive. General Septimus called. You should see this. In the night, someone had left a bundle at the camp's edge. Inside, wrapped in oiled leather, lay bronze feathers, pieces of a legion eagle, carefully dismantled but not destroyed. A note in Germanic runes was attached. Lucian, who had picked up some of the language, translated slowly. The head is buried beneath the great oak where your general Varus died. The wings are scattered among the tribes. These feathers are all we can return. Let them be enough. They found the oak, ancient and massive, scarred by old fire. Digging carefully, they uncovered not one, but two eagle heads, the Fecitine and Fecitine. The 19 remained missing, but 2 of 3 was more than they had dared hope. It's not complete, Castor said, looking at the pieces, but it's proof, Marcus finished. Proof we were here. Proof we tried. Proof they existed. As the sun reached its zenith on the 7th day, Germanic warriors began appearing at the forest's edge, hundreds of them silent and watching. The message was clear. Time was up. Marcus gathered his men. Pack everything. We leave within the hour. They had 3 carts now, traded for with Roman gold from sympathetic Germanic merchants. The bones of 5,000 rode with them, wrapped and labeled as best they could manage. The eagle fragments were packed separately, cushioned like the treasures they were. As they prepared to leave, Arminius appeared one last time. You have what you came for, he asked. Some of it, Marcus replied. More than I expected, less than they deserve. Such is the way of all things. Arminius studied the laden carts. Your Senate will call this failure 21 men retrieving 5,000. But you and I know better. You've done what Rome wouldn't, shown honor without strength, achieved victory without swords. He extended his hand, the Germanic gesture of warrior's respect. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus clasped it. Tell your little flower girl, Arminius said quietly, that her general is a man worth waiting for. My spies tell me everything, Roman, even about dawn meetings at temple steps. Marcus's surprise must have shown, because Arminius smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him. We're not so different, you and I. Both fathers who failed our sons, both trying to find meaning in the aftermath. Go home, Marcus Aurelius Corvus. Go home and choose the living over the dead. They left the forest as the sun began its descent, their strange funeral procession winding through paths that had seen so much death. No one attacked. No one interfered. Germanic warriors watched from the trees, some saluting in their fashion, acknowledging duty fulfilled. When they finally emerged from the forest's grip, when they could see open sky and Roman watchfires in the distance, Brutus began to weep. Then all of them, releasing tears they'd held for 3 years or 7 days, or lifetimes. Marcus alone remained dry-eyed, but his hand found the journal in his pack. Inside, a flower that meant what he needed it to mean. Today it meant promise kept. Tomorrow it would mean heading home. That night, safely back in Roman territory, he wrote, "Day 30, we have them. Not all, but many. Not whole, but honored. Tomorrow we begin the long march home. I found Gaius as you somehow knew I would. Found him and thousands more. Found enemies who remembered humanity. Found grief that transcends sides. Now I turn south, toward Rome, toward dawn, toward you. I am not the same man who left. The weight remains but feels different now. Shared among many, living and dead. Save a flower for my return. Any flower. I'll know what it means. Soon, little one." The journey home took 40 days longer than the march north, burdened as they were with precious cargo and the weight of ceremony. Word spread ahead of them like wildfire. The ferrymen were returning. They had entered the forest of nightmares and imaged with Rome's lost children. At every town, people lined the roads. Veterans saluted. Mothers wept. Children threw flowers onto the carts. What had begun as a suicide mission transformed into something else. A triumph not of arms, but of remembrance. "Never thought I'd see this," Brutus said, as they passed through another crowded town. Honor without victory. Glory without conquest. Marcus rode at the front, the recovered eagle standards carried beside him. They had commissioned a metal worker in a frontier town to reassemble what they could. Incomplete eagles, but eagles nonetheless. They caught the sun like beacons, announcing to all that Rome's symbols endured. But as they drew closer to Rome, Marcus found his thoughts turning more and more to a single question. Was she still there? Had Livia survived the months of his absence? Did she still sell flowers at dawn? He had written whenever possible, sending letters back with merchants and military couriers. Whether any reached her, he couldn't know. The journal was nearly full now, pressed flowers marking each stage of their journey, each small victory over despair. Day 65. Tomorrow, we reach Rome. The Senate has sent word we are to enter formally through the Capena Gate, the same place we departed. They're calling it a ceremonial return, though I suspect they're simply shocked we returned at all. I should be thinking of protocols, of speeches, of the thousands of families waiting for news of their dead. Instead, I think of dawn at the Temple of Vesta. Will you be there? Have you grown taller? Do you still remember the sad soldier who became your mourning companion? The flower you gave me has survived the entire journey, pressed but intact. Like hope itself, fragile but persistent. Tomorrow I'll know if that hope has meaning. They camped that final night outside the city walls. The 20 men who had left as broken souls had become brothers, bonded by their strange quest. They sat around the fire, sharing wine and memories. "What will you do now?" Lucian asked. "After we deliver them." Marcus had been offered reinstatement by the Senate, shocked by his survival and the partial recovery of the eagles. He could return to military life, perhaps even surpass his former rank. "But I think," he said slowly, "I'm done with wars, done with sending boys to die for abstract glory. There are other ways to serve Rome." Here Septimus raised his cup. "To other ways, to the ferrymen," Brutus added, "and to the ones who wait for us at dawn." They knew about Livia, all of them. Somewhere between Germania and home, she had become their collective talisman, the child who sold flowers and dispensed wisdom, who had saved their general from despair and, by extension, saved them all. Dawn came wrapped in autumn mist. They formed their procession carefully, Marcus at the front, with the eagle standards, then the carts with their sacred burden, then his 20 companions. They had polished their armor, cleaned their gear, If they were to honor the dead, they would do so properly. The Capena gate loomed before them, crowded with watchers. The Senate had turned out in force, along with what seemed like half of Rome. But Marcus's eyes searched for only one face. She wasn't there. His heart sank even as he kept his expression neutral. Of course, it had been months. She was a street child, with no protection except what his arrangements might have provided. Anything could have happened. He forced himself to focus on the ceremony, on the families pressing forward to search for familiar names among their recovered dead. They proceeded slowly through the streets, the crowd following. The Forum Romanum had been cleared for their arrival. Platforms erected for the Senate to receive the eagles formally. Marcus saw Helena among the dignitaries, dressed in mourning white. She met his eyes once, nodded, not forgiveness perhaps, but acknowledgement. The ceremony was long, filled with speeches about Roman virtue and the honored dead. Marcus stood through it all, the incomplete eagles heavy in his hand. When called upon to speak, he said simply, "We went to find 20,000. We returned with 5,000. It is not enough. It will never be enough. But every man recovered is a son returned, a brother reclaimed, a father brought home. They died as Romans. Now they rest as Romans. That is all any of us can ask." The crowd erupted in mixed celebration and mourning. Families surged forward to claim their dead. The partial eagles were received into the Temple of Mars. And finally, Marcus was free. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring congratulations and questions, making for one destination. The steps of the Temple of Vesta were empty save for fallen leaves. The flower sellers in the market hadn't seen Livia for days. Dread settled in his stomach like a cold stove. He nearly ran to Demetrius's school, bursting through the door to find the Greek teaching a class of young students. But no Livia. "Marcus," Demetrius rose, surprise and joy on his face. "You're alive. We heard rumors, but where is she?" Marcus cut him off. "Where's Livia?" Demetrius's expression shifted to concern. "She was here yesterday for lessons, but she's been worried. Some of the other street children said she's been ill. She hides it well, but Marcus, she's been waiting for you, every dawn at the temple, every day at lessons. One more day, she keeps saying. He promised to come back. Where does she sleep now? I found her better shelter, a widow, near the Sabura, who takes in orphans for small coin. Your funds have kept her fed and safe." But he hesitated. "She's been fading since the leaves turned. I think she's been holding on for you." Marcus ran. Through streets he'd walked as a general, now racing as something more fundamental, a father seeking his child. Not of blood, but of choice, which somehow made it more urgent. The widow's house was small but clean. She answered his frantic knocking with alarm that softened to understanding when he gasped out Livia's name. The little flower girl. "Oh, sir, she's been so poorly, won't eat, barely sleeps. Just keeps saying she has to see someone at dawn." She led him quickly through the house. "She's in here," but Marcus didn't wait for warnings. He pushed into the small room to find Livia on a simple cot, smaller than he remembered, face flushed with fever. Her flower basket sat beside the bed, empty save for a thick bundle of parchments tied with string. "Livia," he said softly, kneeling beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first. Then they cleared, widened, filled with tears. "You came back," she whispered. "You actually came back. I promised, didn't I?" His own voice broke. "I always come back for dawn flowers." She tried to sit up, and he helped her, alarmed at how light she felt. "I wrote you letters," she said, pointing weakly at the bundle. "Every day, Demetrius helped with the hard words. I told you about everything, the lessons, the cats, how the baker's wife started saving me the good bread. I knew you'd want to know. I wrote too," he said, pulling out the journal. "See, every flower you gave me saved. And look," he showed her Gaius's wooden horse. "You were right, he did have it with him." She touched the little horse gently. "Now he can play in the star place. That's good. A coughing fit shook her thin frame. I tried to wait, tried so hard, but I got tired. No, Marcus said firmly. No talk of getting tired. You're going to get better. I'll get the best physicians, and you'll be strong again, and we'll have our mornings, Marcus. Her small hand found his, grip weak but determined. I need to tell you something. That flower I gave you, the one that means what you need it to mean. I know what it means now. What? It means family. She smiled through her tears. You went to find your son, but you found a daughter too. That's what the flower knew all along. The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. All those mornings, all that wisdom from a child who had nothing. She hadn't just saved him from despair. She had given him a reason to continue beyond duty, beyond grief. Yes, he said, gathering her into his arms. My daughter, my brave, wise, flower-selling daughter. And daughters need fathers who stay, who watch them grow, who bore them with long stories about their adventures. Tell me, she whispered against his shoulder. Tell me about the forests, about finding them, about coming home. So he did. He told her about Germanic women sharing grief, about Arminius and his unexpected honor, about 21 men becoming brothers through shared purpose. He told her how her flower had traveled every mile, how her wisdom had echoed in a forest of death, and somehow made it a place of understanding. Somewhere in the telling, her breathing eased. The fever seemed to cool beneath his touch, whether from the god's mercy or a child's will to live now that her waiting was over. He couldn't say. When Demetrius arrived with a physician, they found them both asleep, the general sitting on the floor, the child curled in his lap. A journal of pressed flowers open beside them. Will she recover? Demetrius asked the physician after his examination. The fever has broken, the doctor said, puzzled. It should have been fatal, she was so weak. But sometimes when the spirit finds what it's been waiting for, he shrugged. She'll need care, proper food, rest. But I believe she'll survive. Marcus woke to find Livia watching him with clear eyes. Did I dream it? She asked. Are you really here? I'm here, and I'm not leaving again. Promise. I promise. Though, he smiled, I might need help learning to live without wars. Perhaps someone could teach me about flowers. I hear there's good business in it. She laughed, weak but real. I know someone, but she'll expect you to work. Dawn comes early for flower sellers. Then I'd better get used to it. Helena came that evening, drawn by news of Marcus's frantic search through Rome. She found him at Livia's bedside, feeding her soup with patient care. This is the child, she asked softly, the one you wrote about. Marcus had sent Helena letters too, trying to bridge their grief with words. In them he had told her about Livia, about dawn conversations and unexpected wisdom. This is Livia, he confirmed. Livia, this is Helena, my wife. The introduction hung heavy with unspoken questions. Helena studied the child, thin, worn, but with eyes that held depth beyond her years. My husband says you knew our son was at peace, Helena said finally. That you saw him in a dream, in the star place. Livia nodded solemnly. He has his wooden horse. He wanted his father to know he wasn't angry about what happened. Helena's composure cracked. She sat heavily on the bed's edge, tears flowing freely. I've been so angry, she admitted, at Marcus, at the gods, at Gaius, for leaving. But a child's dream tells me what all the priests couldn't, that anger serves nothing. Mama used to say anger is just love, with nowhere to go, Livia offered. Maybe the love could go here instead. It was presumptuous, impossible, this street child suggesting she could fill the void left by their son. But Helena looked at Marcus, saw something in his face, not replacement but expansion. Love, finding new channels. Perhaps it could, Helena said softly. If you'll teach me about flowers, I've heard they mean things. Oh yes, Livia brightened. All sorts of things, happy things and sad things and everything between. I'll show you. Tomorrow at dawn. And so it was that the next morning found an unusual trio at the steps of the Temple of Vesta. A general who had faced death and chosen life, a patrician woman, learning that grief shared weighs less than grief carried alone, and a small girl who sold flowers and spoke of star places with casual certainty. Livia was still weak, bundled in warm cloaks, but she insisted on maintaining her spot. "People expect flowers here," she explained. "You can't disappoint people who need beautiful things." As the sun rose over Rome, painting the Forum in shades of gold and possibility, Marcus helped Livia arrange her blooms. Helena purchased the first flower of the day, a white lily for remembrance, a pink rose for hope. "What does this one mean?" Helena asked, pointing to an unfamiliar bloom, small and white with purple edges. Livia looked at Marcus, and they smiled together. "It means what you need it to mean," they said in unison. "Then it means family." Helena decided, complicated and unexpected, but family nonetheless. Citizens began their daily routines around them, merchants hawking wares, senators debating, priests preparing rituals. Life in all its mundane glory, made precious by its fragility. "Look," Livia said suddenly, pointing at the sky. "The stars are fading, but they're still there, just hidden by the sun." Marcus followed her gaze, thinking of 20,000 souls, of Gaius with his wooden horse, of all the boys he'd brought home, and all the ones he couldn't. They were there, just hidden by the brightness of living. "Tell me again about the forest," Livia said, leaning against him. "About how even enemies can choose kindness." So he began the story again, there on the temple steps with dawn breaking over Rome. A story of loss and finding, of death and choosing life, of a journey that ended where it began, with a small girl, a basket of flowers, and the radical belief that hope could bloom even in the darkest soil. Helena added her own observations, and soon they were laughing at Brutus's gruff kindness, Lucian's earnest bravery, the strange nobility of supposed barbarians. Other flower sellers arrived, greeting Livia with joy at her recovery. Some customers stopped to listen to the tale. By full daylight, a small crowd had gathered, not for a general's war stories, but for something rarer. A family born of grief and choice, proving that love could indeed find new channels, that endings could become beginnings, that the smallest kindness could echo across empires. "Will you teach me to write better?" Livia asked Helena. "I want to write down all the flower meanings so they won't be forgotten." "I'll tell you anything you wish to learn," Helena promised. "Reading, writing, numbers, history, philosophy," Livia added hopefully. "Demetrius says I think like a philosopher, but I don't know what that means exactly." "Then we'll discover it together," Marcus said. "All of us, a general learning peace, a lady learning joy, and a philosopher learning—" "What do philosophers learn?" "Everything," Livia decided, but slowly, because thinking takes time. As the morning progressed and Livia grew tired, they prepared to return home, not to the cold villa on the Palatine, but to the house in the Suburra Marcus had purchased, close to common life and dawn flowers, a place where a broken family could rebuild with new pieces. "Wait," Livia said as they gathered her things. One more customer. An old woman approached, coins clutched in her gnarled hand. "Flowers for my grandson's grave," she said. "Something that means, I don't know, that I miss him, but I'm glad he existed." Livia selected carefully a mixture of blooms in white and yellow and soft blue. "Love remembered," she said. "That's what these mean together. Love that death can't steal because it lives in the remembering." The woman paid and left with tears and smiles mixing on her weathered face. Livia watched her go with satisfaction. "See," she said to Marcus and Helena, "this is important work, not like fighting wars maybe, but important. People need beautiful things, especially when life isn't beautiful. That's what flowers are for, reminding us that lovely things grow, even when everything seems dead." Marcus lifted her into his arms, her weight still too light, but her spirit immeasurable. "Then we'll make sure Rome never lacks for flowers or their meaning." "Or hope," Helena added, taking Livia's small hand. "Never lacks for hope. Hope's easy," Livia said, sleepily exhausted by the morning's activities. You just need someone to share it with. That's the secret. Everything's easier when you're not alone. As they walked home through streets Marcus had traveled as soldier and general, he marveled at the journey that had brought them here. He had left Rome to retrieve the dead and found instead reasons to live. He had entered a forest of nightmares and emerged with understanding. He had lost a son and found a daughter. The wooden horse and the pressed flower rested in his pouch, talismans of a story that would be told in years to come. How a general learned wisdom from a child, how enemies remembered humanity, how love could transform even the deepest grief into something bearing fruit. Behind them at the Temple of Vesta, a few scattered petals marked where flowers had been sold at dawn. By tomorrow there would be fresh blooms and new meanings, new sorrows seeking beauty, new hopes taking root. The sun climbed toward its zenith over the eternal city, indifferent to human struggles but warming them all the same. And in a small house in the Suburra, a family that shouldn't exist, prepared for their first real day together, a general, a lady and a philosopher of flowers, proving that sometimes the most profound victories have nothing to do with eagles or battles or glory. Outside, Rome slept, but in the morning, as always, there would be flowers at dawn, and children learning that beauty matters, and somewhere a general's daughter teaching the city that hope was not just a word, but a choice, a practice, a gift, passed from one broken heart to another, until all were, if not healed, at least whole enough to face another day. And in the Star Place, a young tribune played with his wooden horse and smiled, knowing that his death had not been the end of the story, but merely the turn of a page, the moment when loss transformed into love, when grief became God, when a flower that meant whatever you needed it to mean, bloomed eternal in the hearts of those who dared to remember and choose to hope.